popcorn. Okay, guys, team, welcome to the podcast episode. I am very excited to announce that we have a very special guest on with us today. It is Archie Watts. Archie, how the fuck are you, mate?
I'm all good, mate. How are you?
Living the dream, buzzing to do this. I've been looking to get you involved, have a conversation for a long time. Because we haven't really had a proper conversation before, have we? We've just kind of been supporting each other's socials and stuff. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's just I've been following you for a while, you've been following me for a while, and just going back and forth on Instagram. So it's nice to actually have a real conversation.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. So I was really excited to get you on board because obviously you're very credible in the field as well. Like your content's brilliant. Love seeing it, and the profile has grown quite a lot. You're doing quite well at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying those things. I think definitely over the last year, I kind of seen my profile grow a lot more, especially on Instagram, which has been nice. And yeah, just looking to try and continue that.
Okay, guys. So the idea around today's podcast is we're going to be going deep into the topic of strength and conditioning, specifically for football players. We may touch on other areas like recovery, nutrition. We're just going to see where things go. We're going to keep it light. We're going to keep it fun. So before we get into it, I just would like Artie take a second, introduce yourself, tell everybody what it is you do, so they have a good idea of like how you can help them on this episode, mate.
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up in England and always had the dream of playing professional football. 19, I still didn't have a professional contract, so I took a college scholarship, moved to the US, and I've been here for the last 5 years. And I always had a passion for strength and conditioning, even when I was in England. But since being in America, I kind of got to see what level it can get taken to. Um, and having strength and conditioning staff in all of the colleges that I've been at, I really learned a lot from them, and that inspired me to continue on this journey. So last summer, I got my certified strength and conditioning qualification, and I've been using that to run my online coaching business as well as a little bit of work in person as well.
Nice, mate. Love it. Love it. Pretty similar to myself and what we do. So I was gonna go down another route, but you touched on obviously you took the scholarship in America. Now I know I've worked with a lot of players in the past who are preparing to go over to America with their strength and conditioning and stuff. And it's obviously a pretty popular route now, especially with what I'm seeing in Ireland and the UK and stuff. So would you recommend as a footballer if you're maybe not settled down with a club or anything to go on that scholarship and get involved in that? How's that going for you at the moment, mate?
Definitely. I mean, it's been, for me, it's been the best experience of my life. And I think not only with the football side of things, but just with the opportunities that it gives you in general. I've been lucky enough to play at three different schools, been in three different states. So I really feel like I've had a great experience of all different parts of America. And if possible, I'd love to stay here long term as well. So that kind of sums up how much I've enjoyed it, that I do want to stay here.
Not coming
I think
home.
it's, yeah, not coming home anymore.
Mhm. Yeah, man, I do not blame you. I do not blame you at all. So, one thing I wanted to touch on is question for you. What do you feel is the biggest mistakes? And I'll go into it as well. What's the biggest mistake that you're seeing young footballers, maybe between 18 to 25, for example, making with their S&C at the moment? What do you think's the biggest mistake?
I think the mistake that I see the most is people trying to pick an extreme. So I think on one side, when I first got into this field, the most common hook that you'd see on all the videos is stop training like a bodybuilder. And I think that definitely serves its purpose in terms of getting people away from only doing slow hypertrophy or strength-based movements. But then now the trend I'm starting to see is people going to the opposite extreme and being too like sport specific. So skipping any hypertrophy, skipping any strength training, and doing all of these movements that are labeled as athlete exercises
Mhm.
and not getting that heavy strength stimulus, not building up the muscle tissue that they need. So I think the mistake is picking an extreme and not finding a balance between those two style of trainings because in a great program, you need both of that. You need those exercises that are labeled as athlete exercises, but you also need those traditional bodybuilding movements, especially for the lower body. And of course, you need the strength-based movements as well. And then, depending on the type of athlete you are, is going to depend on the proportion of those two.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think you hit the nail on the head there because I think with so many people, especially with social media these days, like it's almost like there's two parties and there's so much information, so much misinformation out there as well. It's like, do I train like a bodybuilder? Do I not? Do I need to do sport specific? And it can get quite confusing. So what what do you think the way is around that? Like what the athletes need to start doing to overcome that and actually get on to a good program themselves?
I think you kind of got two options in terms of the way that you can make sure you're hitting both parts of that training. So the first would be training it in a single session. So if you wanted to do that, starting with your fastest movements first, like sprints, plyos, then getting into your power-based movements, so lifting lightweight fast, stuff like weighted jumps, Olympic lifts, med ball throws, slams, exercises like that. Then getting into strength work, so for example, a back squat, and then getting in your accessory work. So any of your injury reduction exercises, more isolation-based work, maybe your yielding isometrics, and just building that all into the single session. Or the other way could be to pick specific sessions throughout the week that you want to focus on those training goals on. So maybe one of your sessions you have more of an emphasis on strength. Maybe one of those sessions you have more of the emphasis on speeds. I know for me personally, a big change in my training over the last year or so is, and for my athletes as well, is trying to encourage people to get on the pitch to do a strength and conditioning based session and not having all of your strength and conditioning based sessions in the gym, especially if you're training in a community gym and it's busy, there's not a lot of space. I know for me, it's always been, say, I'm training in a pure gym. It's difficult to get in those plyometrics that you want to get in if you're training in a 2x2 space. So getting on the field, getting on a track, and doing those locomotive plyos where you have that space to really perform them intensively is so helpful, I've found.
Yeah, that's great, mate. So I was gonna touch a little bit on kind of it really resonates with me the way you put that forward. Like, obviously, you don't want to keep it at the extremes because I know from my journey, obviously, whenever you first get in the gym, talking from experience when I was like 16, 17, 18, the only way I thought you were to train, like, obviously, I got into the gym because I was a footballer. I was like, okay, I need to put on some muscle, I need to do this to become better at the sport. But what the route I went down was obviously the only thing I knew to do was kind of like a bro split. So I started off, and that got me so far. Don't get me wrong, like that did help to a degree because I needed to add some volume size, muscle tissue. But then eventually I started getting more into strength and conditioning and stuff. And I probably took it to the other extreme where I stopped doing all the hypertrophy accessory work and I started really focusing on like football specific and then started running into problems with that. And then you kind of come to the point, well, I did realize that there needs to be a balance here between what I'm doing whenever it comes to football specific and bodybuilding. Now, there's a place for it all, in my opinion. But the thing that I always come back to, there's no right answer for any player, but it's dependent on the player and what that player needs. So a big thing for me and what I do, I have the system now in place for every athlete that comes through my program is we always do our needs analysis first and our testing first. So we see where they're at in terms of their movement quality, their speed, their strength, their power, and their conditioning. Then we put that into a profile and we're like, okay, where is athlete A lacking? What do they need to improve on? And from there, we build the program around that. So I think it's important for athletes to listen to this. Like, there's no one fits all answer, but there is a better program for you. And it's important that I think they even invest into someone who actually knows what they're doing, because we know ourselves, strength and conditioning is a very deep subject. It goes into high detail in all areas. And like, the more you look into it, the more you realize that you actually don't know about things in it. Whereas before, at the start, when I was like 18, I thought I knew it all. But the more I get into learning about strength and conditioning, the deeper it actually gets. And I'm like, fuck, I actually do not know a lot compared to what I thought I did. But that's the same with everything out there. So the big point that I would want to get across to anyone listening to this at the moment is there's no one fits all solution to your problem. Yes, a good program will combine a lot of those things, but if you want to get the most from your performance, body composition, anything that you're looking to improve on, it needs to be, doesn't need to be a specific program, but it needs to be specific to you. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you said, with the movement analysis, the testing at the start of a program, just really understanding the needs for that individual athlete.
Mhm.
And I think you can see it on the pitch as well. If you look at different footballers playing, you'll see that some are more muscular and more muscly driven, some are more elastic and more elastic driven. So then it's looking at how you're going to change the programming for those individual athletes in order to not only build on their weaknesses, but also continue to make sure that their strength is their strength.
Mhm. Yeah, I completely agree. Like, obviously, we want to improve on weaknesses, but I think one of the best things that you can do for an athlete, and this is what I try to do, is almost like double down on what their strengths are. If they're, for example, a very fast athlete or an elastic athlete, as you say, really try and improve on that quality and get it maxed out, because that's what's going to be their advantage. That's going to be their secret weapon. Then just try and float the other physical qualities up to where they need to be. Would you agree on that, or would you take a different approach?
Yeah, definitely. I think that it's obviously easier to make progress faster with those weaknesses, but not only from a
Mhm.
performance side, but just the way that you're gonna stand out on the pitch. I think that everybody needs those standout qualities and those qualities that are unique to them and unique to them as a player. You want to be able to say yourself, this is my strength, this is my technical strength, this is my physical strength, this is what makes me stand out on the pitch, and this is what makes me the player that I am and what makes me a special player and someone that should be getting these opportunities in whichever situation they're in. So I think it's again finding the balance between making sure that you don't have a clear weakness, something that's gonna limit where you can play. But at the same time, then you do want to have those standout qualities.
Yeah, love it, mate. Completely agree with you. What would you say that your standout quality would be? Obviously, take everybody through what position you play and what would your standout quality be then?
Yeah, so I think everyone's kind of surprised to hear that I'm a goalkeeper.
Mhm.
I think that the stereotype of the goalkeeper isn't someone that's going to be focusing purely on the physical side as well. But for me, I use that to my advantage a lot. So I love to play a high line and see myself as someone that's going to talk throughout the whole game. So I think one of my qualities for me is I feel comfortable with balls coming in behind and winning the race to be first to that ball. And honestly, I just feel like I have the extra 5 yards of space that I can take up, knowing that I have the speed, the acceleration, the power to close that distance
Mhm.
and also to trap back in if I need to as well.
Yeah, nice, mate. Do you track your speed or do anything with that?
Honestly, no. It's something that I definitely want to do and have the opportunity to do. And I think that as the equipment becomes more readily available to test it, then I'll use that. My workaround at the moment's been tracking a 32-yard dash.
Yeah.
which just works quite nicely with the yards on the field, and being able to keep that consistent across athletes. But something that I like to track is a triple broad jump.
Mhm.
And for any athletes that kind of in a similar situation to me, you can't test with lasers your speed, say,
Mhm.
then tracking your triple broad jump has a pretty high correlation to your acceleration and to your speed. So if you're making progress on that triple broad jump and you're sprinting 2 times a week, then it's more than likely that you're making progress on your speed as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the way you touched on, like, obviously a lot of players don't have access to some high-end equipment, okay, because that's what we're going to need, like lasers, GPSs and stuff to track those things. You actually don't need those, and we do this a lot with our own players as well. Like, you don't need access to fancy, expensive equipment to actually track and measure progress, but what you can do is just take out a measuring tape, stopwatch, and you can get a lot done with that. Isn't that right?
Yeah, and I also like filming stuff and then just throwing it into
Mhm.
CapCut and just taking down the frames and using that as a way to measure speeds, which can also be a little more accurate than stopwatches sometimes as well.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Do that as well. So, biggest mistakes covered. Okay, stop going to the extremes with your training. Then I kind of touched on make sure that you're assessing, because if you're not assessing, you're only guessing. Okay, assess where you're at, see what you need to improve on, and then build a program around it. So that would be kind of the advice around taking your S&C to the next level. So I wanted to touch a little bit on some other areas like nutrition as well. So if we're going to keep on the topic of mistakes we're seeing footballers make, because nutrition's a very complicated subject for a lot of players as well. I know whenever I was younger as well, I found it quite confusing. Like, what should I be eating? What should I be focusing on, etc. So, we'll start off with you, mate. What do you think's the biggest mistake footballers are making with their nutrition at the moment, or what are you saying?
Honestly, I think just trying to be too strict on a certain plan or a certain diet. I think that it takes up so much effort and energy to say even stick to a very specific meal plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for the most part, you're better off focusing that energy on your training, focusing your energy on the pitch. And that's obviously not to say that nutrition's not important, it's a massive part, but just focusing on eating 5 portions of fruit and vegetables a day, for example, making sure that you're getting 30 to 50 grams of protein in a meal, making sure that you're getting those whole grain carbohydrate sources at each meal. Honestly, like a really easy basic resource that in the US is the My Plate guidelines, and just having the plate like shown visually, you can see that you've got the half plate of carbs for the athlete, you've got the quarter plate of protein, you've got the quarter plate of veggies, and just sticking to those basic principles. And if 80% of the time you eat 80% good foods, then it becomes much harder to go wrong then.
Yeah, man, I completely agree. But you're gonna hear me say this a lot, man. But I believe, and this is what I've seen working with obviously over 100 athletes, etc. It really just depends on the athlete. Everything always depends on the athlete. Sometimes I'll get someone who's really fixated and they're really into numbers. So, like calorie counting, macros, really into that and they really enjoy that. And that's what gets them the best result. And then I'll have an athlete over here, athlete B, who's like, I do not want to be taking photos of my food. I do not want to be tracking calories. It fries my nut, which is probably the camp I kind of fall into as well. I don't really like it either. So it's finding out what works for you. I mean, you can have some sort of balance. As you say, you can work off the my plates. You can focus on having 3 to 4 proper meals a day, half carbohydrates. I always say like a fist size of protein, so you're getting that 30 to 40 grams, as you say, and make sure that you're actually, people probably don't talk enough about like the fruit and veg as well. They're so focused on carbohydrates and protein. But I think another big point as well that you brought up is the fruits and veg, actual health. benefits from that, which is going to actually keep you healthier, keep you from getting sick, etc., which is going to help with recovery and keep you playing. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I think just especially if you're an athlete that's trying to maintain a weight or lose weight or improve body composition, just focusing on fruits, vegetables, especially at the start of meals, is such a massive like hack in terms of just helping to control calorie intake because the satiety that you're getting from those vegetables and your proteins, especially at the start of the meal, just decreases the carbohydrate intake after that. Then obviously you want to balance that depending on whether it's a rest day, whether it's a day before a game, then obviously that's going to change. One thing that I do think is important to touch on, and I know it's a mistake that I made a lot when I was younger, is if you're a footballer that's training in the morning, then what a good meal looks like is going to change a lot. So the mistake that I made was I'm training at 7 a.m., 6 a.m., and I'm waking up thinking that I'm eating this healthy breakfast of porridge and blueberries and nuts and seeds and all of these things that are the so say good foods. But then that meal is just sat in your stomach for the entire training session. You don't have time to digest that meal. So again, looking at the timing of meals and the size of meals in relation to training is something that's really important. So now for me, still training early in the morning, then the way that I'm going to eat before training is just more simple carbohydrates and smaller portion sizes so that I still have the energy that I need for training, but I feel good and I don't feel like I have that heavy meal sat in my stomach so that I can perform well in the training session. And I think it's a similar thing for games as well. It's what is a typical healthy meal that you'd be eating away from a game is then going to look a little bit different as well. Because again, we're going to now focus on slightly more simple carbohydrates. We want to decrease the amount of protein and fats in that pre-match meal so that it's easier to digest so that you have the energy for the game. I know that the pancake trend was pretty big around a year ago
Mhm.
on those pre-game meals, but again, it's kind of something you hear pancakes and you think, oh, that's unhealthy. But when you actually
Yeah.
look at the composition of that meal, then it's giving you what you need to perform in that setting. And it's not to say that you're then gonna go and eat pancakes for every meal, but just looking at food as a fuel in a sense to get what you need out of it.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Like athlete nutrition is going to look a little bit different to just someone who trains a little in the gym, just your normal person. So with that, you obviously touched on, I think it's quite important whenever it comes to fueling before training and games, especially if it's early in the morning or you don't have a lot of time between getting a meal in between your trainings. You want to really focus on foods that are carbohydrate sources that are low in fiber, so they're easy to digest, and you get a quick burst of energy from it. As you say, it may not look the healthiest, but it's going to get straight into the system, and it's going to give you quick, accessible energy. So, absolutely, mate, I would completely agree with that. We touched a little bit on body composition there and stuff. Something that I do a lot with my athletes, and we like to focus on a lot, is body composition. Everybody wants to play their best, but everybody wants to look their best as well. And that's part of it. It kind of blends in to an extent. So we have a high focus on body percentage. Actually, one of the first things that we will look at whenever it comes to testing is body fat percentage and body composition using progress pictures, etc. And I know from experience, and I've seen a lot, that players who, let's say, for example, we have a player who is 10 kilos overweight. Instead of focusing maybe what's the best sports specific program I need to be doing right now, I'm like, hold on a second. We need to keep the main thing, and the priority, the priority. And the priority for you is to get that 10 kg vest off of you so that you can move more freely, faster, and better on the pitch. So, how much do you feel body composition plays into performance, especially maybe for semi-pro or semi-professionals, amateurs who have that bit of weight to lose?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more in terms of making body composition a priority. I think that if you look at what is going to make the biggest difference to your speed, your power, your fitness, in like what's the best exercise for this? Well, actually, if you just were to improve your body composition, if you're carrying around 5 kilos less of fat, your speed goes up, your power's going up, your fitness is going up. So, in terms of the biggest mover that we can use straight away to improve performance, that's going to be one of it. And I think then the balance, especially in season, is making sure that you do find that balance between performance and improving body composition. You don't want to be dropping calories so low that you're feeling fatigued in training, you're feeling fatigued on the pitch, you're not recovering properly between sessions, but you then obviously if you are an athlete that's overweight, needs to lose body fat, then you do need to be in a slight calorie deficit to be able to lose that weight, to be able to improve your performance on the pitch. So, yeah, like you say, in terms of one biggest mover, if you are somebody that has that excess body fat, that's going to be the fastest way you're going to see progress on the pitch.
Yeah. Also, as well, you want to look better with the top off too, don't you? Like,
Exactly. Honestly, I think that's probably why most people start their training and then we reel them into the football side of the training.
yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think for a lot of athletes to get into the gym and they get that kind of body composition goal achieved, they start looking better, and I think they start to go right. What's next? And then they start to move in towards performance, which is kind of the road path that we have on our program. So the way we do it is first things first, we look at body composition. Sort body composition out, you'll always see performance metrics shoot up straight after that, like relative strength, speed, conditioning, all that there. And then it's like, right, let's supercharge this. We've got the foundation now. Let's get really dialed in on what physical qualities that we want to improve on the pitch. And generally, it's pretty much the same when it's football, because football is a field based sport. We need speed, we need acceleration, and we need to be really fit, because there is a lot of ground being covered over 90 minutes, which is a long time, and there's a lot of repeated sprints in there. So it's important that the athlete's able to cope with that as well. Which brings me in the next point. I was going to go into a wee bit of recovery, but I think it's important to talk about benefits of strength and conditioning for injury prevention as well, because I know from my experience, injuries absolutely ruined me from I turned, I think, about 20 to 25 before I got in really into strength and conditioning, personal training, learning a bit more about strength training. Um, so for you, mate, like how important out of 10, what would you rate strength and conditioning for injury prevention? Like how important is it for a player out of 10? Like,
I go with maybe a 7 or an 8.
mhm. Yeah, I would agree. And why is it you think 7 or 8? I wouldn't bump it all the way up to 10, but why is that?
I think because a part of that is load management. And if we look at, of course, that's an aspect of strength and conditioning. But if we look in at other factors that are going to be important for injury prevention, is nailing your sleep, nailing your nutrition, and also just nailing the balance between training itself and recovery. And I guess to touch on, as we're going to speak on recovery anyway, I think the big change for me has been, I think, is it Jack Tyler on Instagram that kind of made the phrase popular, you recover more by doing less. And I think
Yeah.
for me, that's been a big thing that I've taken into my own training and my own game, especially as like a very type A person. It's always go, go, go. Like, what can I do more, more, more to improve this? And I think it's just at some point, just chill the fuck out, try and relax as best you can, and use that as part of your recovery and part of your injury reduction as well.
Yeah, man, absolutely love that because I know from experience myself, and I know a lot of the athletes I work with. It's funny, sometimes I'll get an athlete onboarded onto the program. They've got two games that week, or they're in a really congested period, and they're like, should I not be doing more in the gym? Should I not be doing more training? I'm like, mate, you were doing 5, 6 gym sessions a week. We need to pull this back, okay? Because if you don't, you're not going to make improvements in the actual qualities that we want to improve. Like strength's going to be really hard to improve, speed, etc. And you're just going to burn yourself out, fatigue yourself. So it's an interesting point on that. So obviously, S&C has a massive place in regards to injury prevention, but also as well, if you're not recovering, because essentially S&C, your gym training, your pitch training is all going to be putting stress on your body. So if we're unable to recover from that stress, with good nutrition, good sleep, main two things, then we're wasting our time and we're actually going to be digging ourselves into a bit of a hole. So we could actually be regressing from doing more, which a lot of athletes I see do this. So it's important that, and I always come back to this, it does depend on the athlete, what their current physical state is and how well trained they are. If you're a well trained athlete, yes, may be able to squeeze a little bit more in, but for the majority of footballers coming through, generally what I see, footballers are not that well trained in the gym. They're not ready for high amounts of load in their training. So we need to nearly strip it right back to the basics and build up from there. And from there, over a consistent period of time, consistent period of training, we can do a lot more. But we don't want to start, as you say, with the extreme, the far end, doing all this crazy shit you're seeing on Instagram. Okay, you may not be ready for that, but we just need to make sure that whenever we get you in, the first priority is to do no harm. Okay, your football is priority, your availability is priority for the team. So it's just, as you say, load management, good recovery is so important so we don't get carried away. I'm kind of rambling on here. I forget what we were kind of trying to get to the point to, but it was injury prevention. So yeah, we'll touch a bit more on recovery now. We'll go deeper into that. So
I think, sorry, I don't want to cut you
yeah, go on
off, but
ahead if you have something
yeah,
to say.
I also want to say, kind of the theme of what we've been speaking about is not taking one extreme, not taking the other extreme at the same time. And I think I'm sure you can relate to it as well. Now you see footballers getting back into the season. They've put in a load of work this off season, training hard multiple days a week. They get into the season and all of that strength training just goes out of the window because you can focus too much on preparedness. You can focus too much on recovery as well. And especially when you've got a season that's 40 odd weeks long, then maintaining and improving physical qualities throughout that season is also so important. And part of that is training, part of that is putting stress on your body. So again, it's finding the balance in the performance and the recovery as well.
Yeah, I just find out of most sports, football is one of the most tricky whenever it comes to strength and conditioning. As you say, just because the amount of volume of games within a season over such a long period of time is nuts compared to any other sport. Whereas a lot of sports, you'll have massive off seasons where you can go really deep into your preparedness for that event. For example, if it was, what sport could we use?
I mean,
For
honestly,
example, yeah,
even in the US, you kind of see the difference for the football,
because you
so
have longer
soccer
off
for the
seasons, don't
Americans.
you?
We got this massive off season. So now we're in
Mhm.
season, we're going to play for 3, 4 months. And then you have that massive off season to prepare. So it's almost you take a completely different look at it in terms of from a strength and conditioning standpoint, because if your season is only 3 months long, then now we can say, okay, well, it's only 3 months. You're playing 2 games a week. You're traveling 20 hours a week sometimes. We are just going to focus on maintaining because we have
Yeah.
8, 9 months to now go away and make loads of progress with loads of stress in the off season. Whereas in England, you don't have that luxury of saying, oh, I'm only going to maintain in season because your season's 40 weeks long. You're going to have 2 weeks of postseason. So you can't then say, I'm going to make this crazy amount of progress in 10 weeks a year. It just isn't enough time to truly make a big difference to your performance. So looking at the balance between those two styles of schedules, then the strength and conditioning in season, learning how to make progress in season for those longer seasons becomes way more important. And then we do need to look at adding a little bit more training volume into that week compared to what you're going to be doing in, say, America, or even at points in your season where you are playing 2, 3 games a week, especially towards the end of the season where you're making up those games that have been postponed because of the weather, stuff like that. So if you're playing 1 game a week, then your strength and conditioning volume is going to go up. If you're 2, 3 games a week, then it's going to go down. And again, it's just finding that balance so that when you do get to the end of the season and you're playing your most important games, the cup finals, the games that are going to win you league titles, the games that are going to stop you getting relegated, those are the games where you want to be performing at your best. And that only happens if you make progress throughout your long 40-week season. So,
Yeah, absolutely crazy. I find it mad that season in America, like I know because I've worked with these guys before, they're only like 3, 4 months long. And then you come over to, like, I know even for myself, I play amateur here in the UK and stuff. Well, and I am lucky to get 8 weeks off a year from football, like generally. And everyone I know is the exact same, whether you're playing professional all the way down to the bottom of amateur. It's the same everywhere. So it can be very tricky. And you're going into 2 games a week and stuff as well some weeks. So there's a lot of games in there. And then if you look at the likes of the Premier League now, even Championship, the amount of games is just going up and up and up. And it's like, how do you even cope with the amount of volume and keeping, like, it is just all about keeping players available because if they're not available with the high amount of stress of playing, then like these big contracts that they're getting, they're not worth it. Do you know what I mean? So it can be tricky, but as you say, you just need to manage it around their schedules. It goes up, it goes down. But yeah, so I think the big point I want to take from what you were saying as well is if you are playing football and you're playing the majority of the year, then I think you need to manage your expectations little with how much progress you can make in a period of time because it's not like you have 8 months no games, training with teams, whatever way it works. You're basically playing all year round, so you can't expect to make massive jumps in performance very quickly because if you spike low too quickly, trying to get ahead of the curve, you're just gonna hurt yourself, you're gonna get injured, and you're gonna actually send yourself backwards, or you're just gonna burn yourself out so that you can't perform. So that would be my biggest take from what we were talking about there. Would you agree?
yeah, I agree. I also think that you want to use your sport and see the strength and conditioning that you're getting from your sport anyway. So if that's
Mhm.
football and you're playing 2 games a week, you're getting your top speed exposures in games. You're getting hundreds of changes of direction. You're getting hundreds of accelerations. You're getting great fitness. So then it's looking at what am I getting from playing football and what am I not getting from playing football and trying to balance those two. Because if you can get it playing football, then great, go and play more football. If you can't get it from playing football, then it's something that you want to be focusing on in the gym, which is why the strength training and those typical exercises that are now being labeled bodybuilder exercises can be so
Mhm.
important because they're exercises and you're getting a stimulus that you're not getting on the pitch. So, and as we said, improving your strength, weight training in general is a great way to reduce injuries over the course of the season. If you're only playing one game a week, you're typically not getting the top speed exposures in training in those smaller sided games. So then it becomes
Yeah.
important to get that in your strength and conditioning training as well. So always looking at trying to complement what you're already getting from playing football and what you're not getting from football, and getting the balance between the two is what's really going to optimize performance and longevity over a season.
Yeah, I love the way you brought that up. Focus on what you're not getting. One of the first strength and conditioning courses I did was it was brought to our attention in one of the classes that you need to focus on what you're not getting as an athlete. Like as you say, you're already getting so much exposure, especially if you're playing 1, 2 games a week to certain quality. So you just need to focus more on what you're actually not getting, which is, as you say, the bodybuilding exercises, the hypertrophy work, the strength stimulus, all that stuff that you're not getting on the pitch. Finding out a way that you can dose that in effectively, even if it's just a little bit, to manage things, then that's what's going to be the key to keeping you well overall as an athlete. So I think that was brilliant. So we'll move on to recovery. Recovery, like, these are the biggest things. Like recovery is a massive topic that gets brought to me by a lot of players, and it's definitely something that's clouded with a lot of stuff that it probably shouldn't be, in my opinion. But it's gonna sound this conversation probably gonna sound quite boring to people because it's gonna be the same thing again. It's gonna be, are you getting a good quality night's sleep? Are you getting your protein in? Are you getting your veggies? Like what? We'll start off on the opposite side of things. Like, what's the biggest mistake you feel footballers are making with the recovery at the moment?
I think it's the similar thing of people trying to do more and more and more to recover. And I think it, of course, comes from the top, from the elite players who, like, that is their job. They have 8 hours a day in the facility trying to get the 0.1% differences. And it looks great. And I get why athletes want to be doing that as well. But if you're not getting the sleep, if you've not got your nutrition on track, if you're not hydrating, then I would much prefer athletes take that energy that they're putting into foam rolling, the energy that they're putting into static stretching, the energy they're putting into a 30-minute recovery ride on the bike, take all of that energy and put it back into optimizing for sleep and nutrition. Whether that's you take your 30 minutes that you would have spent on the bike and you spend it meal prepping instead. Whatever it needs to be to optimize for that sleep, for that nutrition. I think that all of the energy and focus should be going there. Quick hack for like sleeping. I think the biggest change that made the biggest difference to my sleep is charge my phone away from my bed. Whether it's outside the room, whether it's the opposite corner of the room, I think that's the one biggest thing that made the massive difference to my sleep because now you're not going on your phone before bed, which is not only pushing your bedtime back, but it's also decreasing the quality of your sleep. And when your alarm goes off in the morning, you're out of bed, you're over the other side of the room, you're outside your room. And at that point, it just becomes a little bit harder to go back to bed. And then you're knocking off that consistent sleep pattern again. So I think that's the one biggest hack. And then the second thing is just as best you can be consistent with when you go to sleep, when you wake up. And I think for me, having a consistent schedule, even if the total amount of sleep goes down, having the consistent schedule just makes me feel so much better on the pitch when I'm training, when I'm playing.
Yeah, I mean, I would 100% agree. I do the same thing. I actually have an app on my phone called Opal, that I use quite strict with my mornings and my evenings. So I I do my best. I do it quite consistently to whenever it comes to 9, half 8, 9 o'clock, whenever I get the kids to bed and stuff, I make sure to get the phone away. And Opal blocks me from being able to go on to social media and stuff. And I think if you can do that, like, and get in something relaxing before bed, like even if it's reading a book, something destimulating, get the lights down, like the difference it makes whenever your head hits the pillow. Like I can be out within 2, 3 minutes. Whereas if I'm overstimulated through watching TV, playing on my phone, like I can find that it can take me up to an hour, even longer sometimes to fall asleep. So little things go a long way with that. And like I know it sounds boring and stuff, but the difference that can make to how you feel, how much you recover is massive, as you say. So I completely agree with those points as well. I think as you were touching on as well, people get caught up at the other side of things, to the other side of the extreme, where it's like I need to get myself a massage done. I need to be foam rolling 30 minutes a day. I need to be doing my 30 minutes on the bike. When really that stuff's okay as long as the bigger chunks are looked after first, you know, and you're gonna get like massively more returns from the sleep and the nutrition compared to the maybe couple of percentage that you'll get from the other things as well.
Yeah.
So
And I
yeah, I
think
completely agree with you on that.
a nice way that you can pair the 1% with the bigger percentages of sleep is if you do want to do the static stretching routine, if you do want to do the foam rolling, then do that for the 30 minutes before you go to bed. Shut your
Mhm.
phone off, put it over there. You got 30 minutes to do your stretching, your foam rolling. You're getting not only that tiny benefit from that, but if you build that into your sleep routine, then you're getting a much bigger benefit paired with that of just being able to shut off and relax before you're going to sleep. And I think for me, I love the static stretching. Um,
Yeah.
and I know as I've got older, as I've learned more about strength and conditioning, I know that the benefits are smaller than what I thought they were originally. But for me now, it's just a massive part of my routine as a player is I do my static stretching before bed, throw on a podcast, and just use that as 20, 30 minutes to just relax. And I feel a little bit better from the stretching, and I feel a lot better from having the routine before I go to sleep and improving the quality of sleep.
Yeah, I love that. Like, I would completely agree. It's like you're not, yes, you get the small benefit of whatever it may be for your injury prevention and stuff, but like it's a really good way to just get you out of your head, into your body, get into that um parasympathetic, get yourself relaxed before bed. And like if it's built into your routine, your brain's going, okay, this is what we do before we go to bed, and it just makes it easier to fall asleep. So I think that's a great thing. I try to do it whenever I get the time to do a little bit of mobility, a wee bit of stretching. But for anybody who actually knows me, I have two very young children, so it's quite nuts at bedtime. We do have things pretty well under control at the moment, but yeah, my sleep probably isn't as optimized as it could be, but I do my best. But it's actually made me appreciate so much more how important my sleep is. So I do my best to optimize it as much as I can. I mean, I'll be up pretty early myself with the kids and stuff, so I'm trying to get to bed no later than 10 o'clock. And I do that quite consistently. And as you say, if you build up that consistency with bedtimes and waking it, then your body's gonna set for that. And like it's gonna know when you go to bed, 10 o'clock, it's like, okay, lights out, we're ready to go. And just makes it easier falling asleep. So completely agree. Right. Let's move things on. We are an hour in, so I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know that you're busy today. But I've got two more questions for you. Okay. And we'll want to start off with the first one. What is your mission, Archie, for What's your program called? Take everybody through a
Um,
quick pitch.
so I got my Ultimate Footballer program, which is 6 days a week, two lower body days, two upper body days, two sessions on the pitch focused on speed. And I programmed that on like a high low model. So we got three main sessions a week and three accessory sessions a week. And essentially, I made that to give footballers what I didn't have when I needed it, which is a strength and conditioning program to follow that's structured, that's going to improve speed, that's going to make you fitter, that's going to make you stronger. Honestly, everything that we've spoken about just to boost performance on the pitch. And I wanted something that was accessible, affordable, and helps keep people accountable. And we've grown a nice little community in there of players all working together towards that same training goal, which again, I think is something that's nice to have because for me, getting into strength and conditioning as a youth athlete, I felt like I was training towards something that no one else was training towards. And I think knowing that there's other people working towards that same goal is just a nice way to keep people moving on. So, yeah, if anyone does want to jump into that, I've got a 7 day free trial and it's $19 a month, which I made it that way so that it's affordable to everyone because I've then got the one-to-one premium coaching on top of that. So, yeah.
Nice one, mate. Final question kind of leads from where you were getting at there is what's one piece of advice you would give to younger Archie, mate? Could be
That's a tough one.
anything. Yeah, take a second.
Yeah, well, um, honestly, I'd say just enjoy the process of what you're doing more. I think that I put a lot of pressure on myself as a youth athlete coming up that I had to get the professional contract.
Mhm.
That had to be my career. That was the dream the whole way. And I always remember a conversation I had with a friend on the pitch one time. And we'd been training a couple of hours. And at this point, we're both still chasing pro contracts, not quite there. And he looked at me and said, is this all going to be worth it? Like, is all of this training, is all of these hours, is all of this sacrifice all going to be worth it if we don't get the pro contract? And we kind of looked at each other, thought about it for a while, and said, yeah, because everything that you do when you're training for this performance, when you're training towards a goal, whatever it is, I don't even think that if you do end up achieving the goal, that isn't the most important thing because the goal always moves. Once you get that goal, there's going to be another goal, but the journey is every single day. And I think that every setback, every point in that journey, you're always learning something, you're always learning something new. And just having a goal to follow and a journey to go on in general, and being able to enjoy every step of that journey, whether it's successful or not, I think is the most important thing because at the end of the day, that's your daily life, that's your daily existence. So I would say to myself, just take a little bit of pressure off and enjoy every step of that journey. And honestly, I think I'd say the same thing to myself now is don't put too much pressure on what those end goals are. They're always going to move, they're always going to get bigger. Enjoy this moment now, enjoy this part of the journey, enjoy all of the experiences you have because I think when you look back, you always kind of look at everything in rose tinted glasses. And I think if you can look at your daily life on that process now, then it's only going to benefit your life overall.
Absolutely love that, mate. Went real deep there, but it was right on the money. I'll finish with this. I had a sports psychologist, and it'll lead into what you were saying there. Sports psychologist, I need to get her back on, Annika McGivern. and I had her on for a conversation, and something she said that has stuck with me for the last 2, 3 years, and it's something that I always try and bring myself back to because I'm sure a lot of players can resonate. Like it can almost take the fun out of like because football's fun. That's why we got into it because we love the game and it's supposed to be enjoyable, but it can be so easy now, especially with how football's going, to put so much pressure on yourself. And I think a lot of players, you see it all the time, fall out of the game because of the pressure, because they're not enjoying it anymore. And from a performance standpoint as well, what Annika said to me was you can't beat a player who's having the time of their life. So if you're out there, as you say, you're out with your mate, you were grinding, you were tossing, you were putting in the graft, which is important as well. But if you're not actually out there having fun, you're gonna really struggle to get into flow, expressing yourself on the pitch. And like, what's the point of doing it if it's not fun? So I completely agree. So take the pressure off, enjoy the process, and just don't be putting so much pressure on yourself. I absolutely love that. So, look, Archie, it's been an absolute privilege. I am so happy that we did this because I really enjoyed that conversation and I took a lot from a few of the points that you brought up today. And I'm sure the listeners to this podcast will take a lot from this conversation as well, mate. We will look at potentially doing it again in the future. I'd love to have you back on because that was brilliant. But yeah, I just want to say thank you very much. And look, I'll see you in the next one, mate. And we'll
Yeah, it
keep
was
in
great.
contact. Fist
Thanks very
bump.
much for having me on.
No problem, mate. All the best. I'll keep in contact and yeah, I'll let you know when this goes live. But really excited to put this out there.
Perfect. Looking forward to
Hopefully hit record.
it.
All the best, mate. Good luck.
Thank you.